The St. Louis Blues' 5-3 shootout win proves exactly my point when it comes to the nature of this team.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen. Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor-Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode of Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about that Blues win over the Vegas Golden Knights and how that basically proves my exact point. The Blues will be hosting the VGK tomorrow and the middle of the pack again. We have a lot to get into on today's episode of Locked On Blues, but I want to start off by saying this. I am happy, okay? I am happy that the Blues defeated the Vegas Golden Knights in a shootout. I am. Do not get me wrong by any means. And do not take my complaint as me being negative about this win. However, I do think it is important for me to articulate to you maybe some of the frustration that I have been exhibiting during the past few, I would say, months of Blues hockey. And it's because of my exact point. I said to you that the Blues play a much more competitive hockey game when it's against some of the better teams in the NHL. However, when the Blues play against teams that are not as good, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but that is a fact, not as good, they seem to lack this sense of competitiveness. Now, I don't know why necessarily they do that. I don't think they intentionally go into games against teams that are lesser than them and think, oh, well, this will be an easy win. However, I do notice a different sense of competition on the ice. So that is my frustration. I am happy that the Blues are winning, and I'll get into this later in today's episode. Why, despite the fact that they have been winning some games, which is good for them, why it also frustrates me. So let me go recap the game for you. In the first period, Captain Brayden Schenn scored with about 8 minutes in, making it 1-0 for the Blues. However, on the VGK's power play, Thomas Hertl is able to tie up the game 1-1. However, with about 17 seconds left of the first frame, the Aussie Nathan Walker is able to give the Blues a 2-1 lead. Entering the second period, about 6 minutes in, Jakey Neighbors is able to give the Blues a 2-goal lead, making it 3-1 STL Blues. However, a minute later, Brent Howden is able to make it a 1-goal lead for St. Louis, giving, again, the VGK some life. However, again, 31 seconds left of play in the second frame. On the power play, Cam Fowler is able to give the Blues, again, a 2-goal lead. However, things did not go the Blues' way whatsoever in the third period. He is a jack of all trades. Yes, that is Jack Eichel. He was able to give the VGK some life again with about 3 minutes left in the third frame. And then finally, the Golden Knights were able to tie up the game in the third period with about 30 seconds left. There was a lot of goals late in all the periods that I've noticed. I was like thinking back on the game and I'm like, no wonder it was so intense. That last minute of play, a goal came out of it. So yeah. However, in OT, obviously nothing was scored. As I said, we went to a shootout. So let me go tell you about the shootout summary. Jake Neighbors had a nice little wrist shot and was able to give the Blues a goal. However, Jordan Binnington was able to give the Blues some life as he made a save on the VGK. Captain Brayden Schenn had a nice wrist shot as well, making it 2-0 VGK. I mean, not VGK, it's St. Louis. Jack Eichel, obviously, his wrister went in behind Binnington, right? Dylan Holloway, his shot went to right of the net. And finally, Binner was able to save the VGK, which meant that the Blues were able to win in the shootout final score being 5-4. Now, this was a really big win, in my opinion, for the Blues, just because of the fact that, yes, I understand that the Blues did have quite the lead heading into the final frame. However, I feel like the Golden Knights are one of those teams that just really find a way to come back, and they do that a lot. So I don't know, like, at least to me, in my opinion, I think the Blues winning in a shootout just meant more because it did show that they are able to compose themselves. And it also, again, highlights Jordan Binnington. And I've talked to you countless times about Binnington and the impact that he does have on the ice. Jordan Binnington is without a doubt the Blues' best player. He's one of the biggest assets on this team. Again, I understand that he may not have been having the best season. He's not. That's a fact. Okay. But at the same time, when you're in a shootout situation, I know that the goalies, don't always get a lot of credit. It's always about, oh, well, who actually scored? But it's a really difficult task for the goalies in a shootout. And I think you have to appreciate his calm composure. I mean, yes, the 2 goals of the VGK, it happens, right? But again, when you have one of the most composed goalies in the NHL, I'm joking. Binner, I mean, he's composed this season. But he was an emotional goalie for quite a while and got that rep. But as I said, I feel like he has matured in his game. And that's why it is fun to watch Jordan Binnington on the ice, because he used to be this really emotional player. And obviously he has emotions, right? But he's able to be more composed and calm in the net, which, at least for me, makes me feel more confident with his ability. But I also want to talk to you too about the impact of Braden Shen. Shen has really stepped up big time. Not only has Shen stepped up, but Cam Fowler as well. I don't think there's enough words to describe my excitement, maybe, when it comes to having Cam Fowler wearing the blue note. I think that he has been such a staple player. I think that he honestly radiates what being a blue is, despite the fact that he spent mostly all of his career with the Anaheim Ducks. Um, Another thing that I found kind of interesting was, and this might be like the most random fact, but the Blues did a good job of staying out of the penalty box, okay? Only 2 penalties. So I was really impressed with that. I think sometimes the Blues, they put themselves in silly situations, and that's saying it respectfully, but they do. And I feel like they end up taking penalties that they shouldn't be taking. So I was actually impressed that they did a good job managing to stay out. But we have this, and I don't want to say an issue, right? But you do have to also take into account that that third frame is unacceptable. No matter what team you're playing, you are currently leading, right, by 2 goals. You're up 4-2. You cannot get that lead taken away from you like that. And I think that's where good teams are separated from just decent teams. Now, I know the Blues won, right? There's no denying that. The team won. Good for them. However, when I think back to that third frame, right, the VGK had a lot of puck possession. They had a lot of time on the ice. And I think, too, we saw, again, Ryan Suter had a really big hit on Thomas Hurdle. And I just love seeing that aggressiveness. Now, obviously, seeing Petro makes me just super emotional because, I mean, that's my guy. But overall, I think the Blues did a really fine job besides those 2 goals. I mean, Shen is phenomenal on the faceoff, and that is one aspect of his game that I love to see because he is just so consistent. He does a really good job winning them. So you can always trust him in that sense, right? However, the moment that led, right, to Jack Eichel's goal was due to Thomas Hurdle defeating Schenner on the faceoff. So again, every play begins a certain way, but things happen and it is what it is. But again, as I said, our boy Ivan Barbashev, I mean, he blocked a really good shot from Colton Parayko. But the point that I am trying to make is that the VGK, they're a competitive team. and they know how to come back and end up doing really well. So just something that I wanted to point out to you. However, the VGK, right? You think, oh, we just play the Golden Knights. Well, guess what? We're hosting the Golden Knights tomorrow. That is right. I feel like this schedule is so weird. This reminds me of a basketball schedule. In basketball, when teams play each other back to back, it happens quite a lot, right? This is kind of like how the Blues' schedule is, and I'm not particularly fond of it. I like having separations between teams because I feel like once you see a team and then you see them again in a shorter amount of period, especially like a couple days later, I just feel like, I don't know, for me, it just doesn't drive up the excitement. But hey, I don't make the schedule, and I am glad I don't make the schedule. However, I think that when it comes to the Golden Knights, obviously you have to be worried about Jack Eichel. He is one of those players that no matter what, I'm always going to be concerned. And I think that is fair to be concerned about the VGK just because of how intense maybe he is as a player, right? I mean, in Buffalo, I felt awful for him, right? I mean, he's the captain of the Sabres. We know how that team is. He comes to the VGK absolutely thriving, so good for him, right? Anyways, it is really interesting, this one record. So ever since Coach Montgomery took over in the 25th of November, the Blues have been 12-1-2 when they score first, which I think is a really interesting statistic. I'm all about statistics here, and I thought that was an interesting one. What I will say though, and this is what Shenny said, Braden Shen said, I said Shenny, Shen said after the game. He said, I thought we played a hard game. They're a good team. We played hard defensively, tight checking. They just made a couple of good shots on the 6-on-5, but all in all, I thought the third period was pretty good. So a good game, and now we know how hard it's going to be to win the next one. Here's my thing, and I'm not trying to be negative, right? I'm not. However, to assume, because the Blues did win and defeat the Golden Knights a couple nights ago in the Fortress. I've been there before. Lots of fun, actually. A cool atmosphere. I did get lost in it in the press box. But anyways, getting back to the point. I don't know necessarily if I feel confident about this game. Now, granted, that's how I feel about most Blues games. I feel a little bit apprehensive, a little bit nervous. But for whatever reason, I just kind of feel like the Golden Knights, because I know how this team is with watching them so many times in the playoffs. I just feel like they're going to just come in attacking. I don't think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be kind of relaxed and laid back. I think it's going to be quite the opposite. So for St. Louis's sake, they really need to start attacking from the moment the puck drops. They cannot wait. They cannot make sloppy mistakes. And as I did mention earlier in the episode, one thing I was really proud of the Blues was that they didn't go to the penalty box much, other than a couple times. And that's really big for the Blues to stay out of the penalty box. I feel like they're one of those teams that just takes stupid penalties. You can't afford to do that, especially not against a team like the VGK. And not for nothing, but when I think about the VGK, I think, and I know, oh, Haley, you're going to be talking about the original Misfits. No. But it's like, you have to just keep in mind that this team doesn't really know much adversity, right? And all they know is how to win, essentially. So you have players like a Shea Theodore, who is really good and just knows how to attack. And I think, too, you have to take into account, I just don't know if I would feel comfortable, right, saying this team isn't going to play as hard. I just don't know if I feel that way. I mean, I think about some of the players, right, that they have. They have like a William Karlsson. They have Mark Stone, obviously, Thomas Hurdle, Eichel, and granted, maybe they don't have all the same players. Like they have Noah Hannafin, obviously our boy Petra. They have Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore, White Cloud, just to name a few players on the VGK. I feel like all I do is like name players on the VGK. Obviously, my boy Aiden Hill. I actually enjoy seeing Aiden Hill in net, but the thing that I think I want to make most known is that you just need to be able to find ways to win early in the game and be able to maintain that lead. And while that can be said about any hockey game, right? If you find a way to win in the beginning, just maintain it. The Golden Knights are going to attack. And they're able to pick apart the Blues' weaknesses, right? That's why very rare, like I don't really compliment the Blues' special teams. I don't. But a power play goal, that's something that I'm going to celebrate against a really good Vegas team. Absolutely. However, I don't think that I am in the wrong either for being a little bit apprehensive about this game. Yes, it's on home ice, but does that really mean anything against a team like the Golden Knights? And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. I love Enterprise. I, love home ice. However, a team like Vegas, they don't care. To tell you the truth, they're going to come in attacking. That is why, as I said, and why I'm going to keep on reiterating that, it is just important for the Blues to come out of the gates essentially swinging and just looking to score kind of right away. However, it is interesting, though, because the Blues do okay-ish against the Golden Knights. I mean, ever since the Golden Knights joined the league in that 2017-2018 season, yes, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. I know. The Blues are 12-8-8 against them, which isn't like awful. But the Blues and the Golden Knights have gone to OT 11 times in their 28 matchups, which I think is kind of crazy. But I just think it's kind of funny. Anyway, since December 23rd, the Blues have also scored 50 goals, which is the most in the NHL in that span. So about a month. So yeah, like let's go Blues. Anyways, I think that kind of going back to my main point though, I think that the Blues do have something goodish happening. I do. I just want to take a look back at the lines though that we did have on the other night. Okay. So I wasn't necessarily upset with it. The fourth line, you have Fox as centering. On the left was Walker, and on the right was Matthew Joseph. For whatever reason, I kind of felt like that worked. Defense was a little bit interesting, and I have to tell you the truth, I liked it. You have Cam Fowler and Parayko as usual, right? But a couple of switches, a little adjustments were made as you had a Ryan Suter with Philip Broberg and then Tyler Tucker with Justin Folk. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hale, that's kind of unusual. And I understand what you're thinking, but I think that it is important to try to move things and switch things up. I think that Ryan Suter, and I know that he came into the season, and I know that he's expected to be the third pairing defenseman. I get it. However, again, I know he's like 39. I'm not saying he's the long-term solution. I'm not. However, he stepped into this role, and I feel quite comfortable with Ryan Suter for whatever reason being a second or first pair defenseman. And to tell you the truth, and I'm not trying to be mean in any way, I don't think Jay Folk has had the best season. So I don't think that it's that surprising. But again, maybe agree with me, maybe disagree with me. I don't really care on that one. I'm going to still stand by how I feel about Ryan Suter. And I do believe that Ryan Suter is one of the better players in the NHL. And not just the NHL, I mean, at this point, but I went on the Blues, but also the NHL. I think that he's been in this league for a while. And I know that people kind of complain about him at times, not being like the best guy in the locker room. I don't care about any of that. I don't. I just feel like, I don't know. I just kind of don't have. But I want to talk to you too about something that has been bothering me, the middle of the pack. And why does this bother me? Because I feel like there is a sense of urgency from the Blues to get to the playoffs. And I don't really feel like that is realistic. I don't. Here's the thing. For the St. Louis Blues, I would say the playoffs are kind of a stretch at this point. And I know that I've done a lot of episodes on this recently, but I've been going back and forth on my opinion, which is completely normal, okay? The reason why I'm saying this, I'm looking at the Central, right? And they're close. And I'm not denying that they're not close, right? I mean, the Blues have 50 points. The Canucks have 50 points, but again, it's just the record, right? The Blues have played more games than the Canucks. The Flames are at 51 points. The Avs are at 57 points. So why do I feel a sense of, I still feel like this is going to be difficult? Because you have below the Blues, the Utah Hockey Club of 47 points. Behind them, you have the Seattle Kraken 45. The point is that it's kind of a close race. Now, is it impossible? Absolutely not. But what makes me feel nervous about it is the fact that the Blues cannot seem to get a winning streak. Normally, when you're a team that is competing to be a playoff team, you find ways to win games and you don't look like you're giving up, right? And I'm not saying that the Blues are. I just think that the Blues are just one of those teams that just don't have enough talent. And I get kind of confused sometimes too about what the plan is, right, from Doug Armstrong. I don't necessarily know why he is insisting that this team somehow gets to the playoffs when I don't think they just have the talent. You have a lot of players that are older on the Blues, and this is not a hate to older players in the NHL. However, at the end of the day, the NHL is a young man's game, and you need to have that speed, the mobility. You need to have a lot of factors that go into it. You can't just be signing these players that are just way too old. And listen, I love Ryan Suter, so this is not on Suits, but I think again, Cam Fowler, he's been such a ray of sunshine here, but is he a long-term solution? Absolutely not. So again, going back to my main point, I think that there has to be some real internal questions that the Blues' leadership has to ask themselves. One, where do you see this team going? Is this a playoff team? Is this, we'll try together. If not, we can try again next season. Or is this, hey, we're going to go actually and go on a rebuild? I know that's a scary word, rebuild, right? But that might be the best solution for this team to find long-term success and not just a short-term solution. After we won the cup, we weren't really a contending team again, and that sucks. I thought this team would be a contending team for quite a while, but evidently that was not the case due to the fact that the Blues, well, I'll tell you the truth about it. They didn't have enough young players then to sustain what they built, and a lot of contracts that just were ending. It just was not a good solution. So I want the Blues to be a contending team, and I want them to stay a contending team. We'll see what happens. However, I have a feeling that the Blues will end up in the middle of the pack heading into this offseason. I will talk to you tomorrow ahead of the VGK game. And until then, like always, let's go Blues.